welcome to Startup Grind. And today we have Stuart Mcleod from Xero, formerly from Paycycle. That's I like to hear this story today because I think a lot of guys with their own startups here tonight and love to hear that kind of story, and that's what it's all about here. Hopefully you leave a little bit more inspired, take a few things away. And for those of you that weren't here last month, Startup Grind is directly affiliated with Startup Grind in Melbourne, in San Francisco, and we run the same format. It's an intimate speaker series where we get to hear Stuart's story, pick his brain a little bit. Hopefully I'm asking the questions that you're thinking, and at the end you can jump in and throw a few questions in there too, unless it can't wait and you have to say it straight away. We had a few of those last time.
Jump in, there's no problems.
I'm going to give you the mic.
No worries.
And Jimmy, you can hear me from the back there, alright? Yep. Welcome.
Grab a seat, Jim, it's alright.
Okay. Yeah, and don't be afraid to get any drinks and stuff at any time. So, Stuart, thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Can we give Stuart a round of applause? So, thank you for coming. Tonight, it's going to be very informal.
Good,
and,
good. I like it like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And just want to get, first of all, a bit of background, what your education was, hear about your failures.
Oh yeah, we've only got an hour.
Well, that's it. Maybe just a few of the spectacular ones.
That's a good idea.
And then hear the journey that you went through with Paycycle, in particular, how you built an audience, how you raised the capital, if that's how you went, how you kind of tied yourself to Xero or were thinking about who you were going to sell it to in the early stages, and then a little bit about Xero and where that's headed. Yeah,
sure. So where do I start? So I've got an IT background, so I did an IT degree at Swinburne. I'm Melbourne born and bred, and my first job was in support at Oracle in St Kilda Road, and it turned out, probably upon reflection, that my 4 or 5 years at Oracle, which is, if you don't know, is an enormous organisation of the founder, Larry Ellison, is one of the richest guys not only in America but in the world, and that large organisation gave me a lot of insight into how soul-destroying big organisations work, and but it really gave a lot of, like a young guy who didn't know anything, a really good sort of grounding in particularly in IT. So I was very technical early on, and Oracle's products are enormous. So you sort of find yourself every day there's more and more to learn, and the people I worked with I'm still friends with today and catch up, and it was a fantastic start to a career. And I did something slightly intelligent, moved into a pre-sales role. I hadn't had a sales background, and I've got a fairly, I'm reasonably opinionated, as you'll probably find out, but sales they just don't teach at schools these days, which or ever really, which I find just extraordinary. So the 2 or 3 years that I spent in pre-sales gave me a really good understanding of the sales process and what makes people buy things, and I had some really experienced mentors and managers, and again, what I didn't realise at the time was that was a fantastic exercise in exactly how things, how people make money, really, is what it comes down to, and they're all the intangible skills that I didn't have before going into that role. So eventually as I said, my soul was probably just getting eaten away a bit too much. Those large organisations are very hard to accept, and for most people, really. And so I just left. I just got up and left. I mean, I was 24 or 25 or something, and thought there must be something else in the world. property was of interest to me, and I started a property buying business. It was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. We went into partnership. Nothing really to do with technology. So what we did was like being a real estate agent, but worse. You would go and buy, apartments for people and stuff, and
like act as a broker kind of thing.
Yeah, and do a bit of a reno, and it was enjoyable for about 3 weeks, and then I sort of thought, I've just forgotten everything that I've been taught. So, because the ultimate about sales and that kind of thing is the annuity revenue, and real estate, in actual fact, is the worst thing that you could possibly do in a career, because you are no better than the house that you sold yesterday. If you stop selling, that's it. Your life's over. So, what that did actually lead to, though, was an interest in development, and we bought and sold land, and we eventually ended up in Queensland, in resort towns and things, which is great for a young single guy. I can thoroughly recommend it, with a whole lot of backpackers from Germany. Drinking more than their body weight in alcohol is fun for 6 months or so. But we bought a couple of acres in Airlie Beach in Queensland, and tried to we did get some units going. We had townhouses, we had all kinds of stuff going on. It was a bit ridiculous in sort of the mid 2000s. Money was easy, or early to mid 2000s, and there was. Anybody could rock up at a bank, or not so much the big banks, but solicitor money on the Gold Coast, and just we got checks for $3 or $4 million that in this day and age you wouldn't even dream about. So what ultimately ended up happening was that all went to the shit, and in 2006 I broke up with my girlfriend then in Melbourne, sold everything. Apart from a couple of things, packed the car and drove to Canberra because I needed cash really, really quickly.
Or you'd go and pick up some fireworks.
Well, and porn, yeah. Go and hang out with the ministers. So I had to come back to my IT background. I'd sort of been keeping my hand in and everything.
But why Canberra?
Because the rates for contractors in Canberra are considerably greater than anywhere else in Australia, because nobody else wants to live there, right? and go and work for the government. And that's what I did. So in Melbourne at the time I could earn sort of, I don't know what it was, say $50 an hour. But in Canberra you can get $100 an hour. So that was 13 or 12 or 13 grand a month that I needed about 50 grand a month, but that was better than nothing. So what ended up happening is, because I sort of had this need to service the property that wasn't that flash, and I stumbled literally across this business called contractor management. And what contractor management does in Canberra is take contractors and ties them to an agency and a client, and you just turn their invoice into payroll. That's all you do. So you invoice the recruitment agency for, say, 10 grand. You give the contractor 9,500 and you take the difference. I thought, this is bizarre. Like, what? How has this been going on and I didn't know about it? So it's just payroll. It's just outsourced payroll, really. And I was doing it in MYOB. No, I was doing it in MYOFB, and the experience was just appalling. I hated it. It was every fortnight I would process. So I started off with one contractor just on the side. I was still doing the back to soul destroying work at AusAid, which is part of Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And I started off with one contractor, and then I had 2, and then I had 4, and then I had 8, and then I had 16, and after that my maths starts going. So I ended up with 60 odd contractors that I was paying, processing fortnightly payroll. So what that did was actually taught me something that I'd never had anything to do with, which was payroll and how the taxes work, how FBT works, how deductions work, how salary sacrifice works. And as I said, I was processing it, with desktop software, because there was nothing else out there really for a small business to do payroll and calculate tax. That was it. It was either that or QuickBooks, and I'd done mine before. But I dreaded every fortnight. It was really. By the time you get to sort of a payroll of 100, it takes about 3.5 days, 4 days. And I was processing on the Thursday, and like Thursday at 4 o'clock got pretty stressful sometimes. If you lose your data file, at that time it's just a disaster. So eventually, probably after 6 or 12 months, I was able to quit my contracting job and just do my payroll job full time, or my payroll business full time. Because I was earning more money than I was at $100 an hour or whatever it was. And I thought, this is all right. I can keep going. And but what I really wanted to do was actually build payroll in a better way. Like there must be a better way than this. The problem was that Craig Winkler, who was the founder of MYOB, had taught everybody in Australia that payroll was accounting and accounting is payroll. This is just a phenomenon that is common in Australia and the US. Everywhere else in the world, payroll is not accounting, accounting is not payroll. And so I couldn't find the commercial imperative that would mean that online payroll was going to be purchased by anyone. Like, why would you separate your payroll with your accounting, your accounts, your invoicing and all that stuff? So there was no reason to do it. Anyway, so what I eventually found was a little company in Wellington in New Zealand coming that was doing online accounting. They'd created a general ledger, and they'd got some pretty decent accounts receivable and accounts payable process going. And I think it was about 2007, I rang or Skyped with Rod Drury, and I said, who was the founder of Xero, and I said, if I build a online payroll in Australia, will you support us? Will you allow us to link in? And he goes, yeah, fucking go and do it. Give us 3 weeks, it'll be great. If you've ever seen Rod present, it's quite confronting. And I got together with the guy I was working for at Aussay. Is a genius, like IT IQ through the roof. He hates people, but we had really good complementary skills. We're still great mates today, and he's able to create products from a coding point of view that I never could. So we got together, literally, cliche, over a bar, in Canberra, cold Canberra, on a napkin, and said, this is what we think, we could do. A couple of weeks later, we did it.
So how big was Xero at this stage?
So this was 2009 by this stage. So they listed in 2007. I reckon there wasn't many customers in Australia. Like they bullshitted us. They said, "Oh, we've got 10 or 12,000 customers in Australia." It was more like 120. There was about 10,000 customers worldwide. Yeah. So not very big at all. I think there was maybe one employee in Australia. They hadn't appointed our mate Wayne as a country manager.
You're on camera, right?
Yeah, he'll love that if you're watching Wayne. And so it was just, I don't know how many people, maybe 25 people in Wellington coding away. I think they might have just released an Australian version. So the New Zealand version was first, and then there's always been a global version, and then Australia was next, basically, off the rank. And so away we went, and we kept our ties very close. We built, and it got to in October of 2009, and I still remember the meeting with Wayne Schmidt, who was then the country manager of Australia, and I'd got married and moved back to Melbourne, and we're in our office in Abbotsford, and Wayne came in and said what he'd realised is that without payroll in Australia, which we knew, Xero is not, it can't be anywhere really. So he was desperate for payroll add-ons. And so we started Paycycle. We had this meeting in Abbotsford, and Wayne said, look, I know there's only the two of you, but we really need payroll by the end of November, or I can't sell in Australia. And this was about sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And we said, okay, look, we'll do our best. We'll see what we can do. And so John literally coded day and night. And at this stage, he was just working 1 day, 4 days a week at AusAid and 1 day a week because we didn't have any money. We got what you would never ever release to the public. It was shocking, but you could put in an employee and you could pay them, and that was about it. It would calculate the tax, and we built it in Microsoft Silverlight back then, which is a bit controversial, and the very first version got out on November 30, 2009, and over the next couple of years we just kept refining and building, and I was doing a Master's of Entrepreneurship at Swinburne, and one of our classmates was this mad Argentinian woman called Agus, and we were at the pub one day, and she said, because she had a student visa, so you can't work, right? But she really needed the money, so I said, well, just come and sit in the office for a couple of days a week. I won't pay you, and you do some marketing and social media and stuff. And so we accrued this enormous employee debt, and she was just fantastic in giving the brand a real personality.
Sorry, so this is interesting to me because the startup growing guy in San Francisco is like, he used Paycycle.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he was like, that's brilliant. You got to get him, right? And he loved your product, and he was like, I told him how much Xero paid for it. Sorry, I don't know how we need to get to that. It's like, you got ripped off.
I got ripped off. You should have asked for more. I'll tell you what happened. Anyway, so Agus, you hear all the time, you need good people. She was just so fantastic in giving us a real. She did everything from sales and marketing, and everything but coding. Basically, she wrote all our support and was fantastic. And she was the one. We realised really early on that we needed to be really close to the accountants that Xero was selling to. So luckily, Xero publish all the accountants that they sell to on their website. So we just started at the top and picked up the phone and said, well, whenever you're adding a Xero client, you need to add us. Well, if they need payroll, you need to add us as well. Oh yeah, no problem. So we'll see you next time you're in Sydney or whatever. And so Gus would travel the country talking to these accountants, and what we were able to do is literally hook our caboose to the bandwagon that was starting to gain momentum through 2010 to 2011. And we were on a road show in May of last year with Xero. So it's bloody hard work, but you pick up your banner and you go to 10 regional or 10 cities in Australia. Xero do their talk, and you get up at 7 a.m. and you have the same stale croissants every morning and try and sell Paycycle to each and every accountant that would get out of bed early and do the same thing. Back in those days, we were probably only seeing, I remember in Adelaide, we had a bit of a marketing partnership with ANZ, and there was more ANZ staff and Xero staff than there was accountants in the room, and it was really, really hard going. Like we paid what was then to us a fortune to get on the plane and do all these cities and stay in the hotels, and but it was crucial to what we were doing to attach ourselves to those accountants, and so.
Did you find that, like, last time we had Brent, he said that was a real pain in the ass because he had to educate these people at the same time. Did you find that it was a struggle to get these guys on board?
The great thing was that Xero was doing our education for us. That all we needed to do was make sure that we were in the right spot at the right time, doing the right kinds of things and talking the same language. And that's, we were really conscious of that. We didn't... While it was expensive for us, it was really expensive for Xero back then. So they were doing all the education, they were producing the marketing, they were producing all the, the telling the online story and having the boring conversations about, what about security, and what if I lose my internet? We'll just go down to Telstra and get a dongle. It's like anyway. So. Those are the conversations that we were having, and we don't have them anymore in Australia.
Yep.
In the UK, they still have them. But anyway, Chris Ridd, who was then appointed the CEO or MD of Australia,
who's coming next month to start up Grind.
We just met, literally. So he'd just come on board in early 2011, and this was his first roadshow, and he was having his first conversations with accountants, and what they were saying was, you need payroll. Every conversation you would have was, you need payroll, why don't you buy those guys, because we love them. And we did. We were able to cultivate a really good following in the accountant base, and we had, I think we got up to about 3,000 customers, about 400 or 500 paying at this time. And it sort of turned out that our time on the road was very solidifying, and basically he got on the phone to Rod back in Wellington and said, well, it's perfectly evident here that Xero is nowhere in Australia without payroll. So you either go and build it, or we're going to buy somebody.
Sorry, I'm not. I hate accounts. So, but what was payroll happening in New Zealand? What was the solution there?
So the solution is, and still is today, add-ons. So
okay.
we were just an add-on to Xero. So the accountants were saying, we love the Paycycle guys. There was 3 others in the competition with us, but we were clearly the choice of about 80 to 90% of accountants. And
no, sorry, I mean, who was servicing payroll in New Zealand?
Just add-ons like Paycycle.
Okay.
There's iPayroll, there's Smart Payroll.
Okay.
And that's still the answer today, because they don't have this cultural dynamic that payroll and accounting are together. Whereas in Australia, you just accountants and small business just expect it, because Mile and QuickBooks taught the market that that's the case.
And the New Zealand guys that were servicing the payroll, I'm guessing that your payroll was slightly different on that, so that you had to transition all the New Zealand customers who were already using it? No,
so we still don't do New Zealand payroll.
Oh, okay.
We just do Australian payroll. And this was the different market dynamic, being a New Zealand company, they didn't anticipate, without being here, that the payroll would be so crucial.
Sure.
And what the feedback was from Chris and all the guys was, without payroll in Australia, you're nowhere.
Yeah.
The first conversation that you have with an accountant is like, well, Xero's great and everything, all the features are great, except we need to process payroll, right? So, I can buy, but go and buy Paycycle, or go and buy this, or go and buy that. Yeah, but I don't want to pay twice.
Yeah.
I don't want to have 2 different logins. I don't want to. It just should work, and that's the feedback that they got, and so Chris I find out later. So Chris rang Rod and said, well, you know, we need to do something here, and Rod was like, well, when can you catch up with the Paycycle guys? And Chris said, well, we're about to get in a Hertz van and drive down to Wollongong, so about 5 minutes. And that was the conversation started in late May.
Sorry, so what was Paycycle's situation at that point? How many subscribers or how many people you have working with it? This guy was, using your software, you must have had a bit of a following.
we had about 4 or 5 in May. We had about 400 or 500 paying customers. We definitely weren't break even. In fact, even before the sale, we never paid ourselves a wage. We never got that far. So we were paying our staff though. So we had 2 in sort of marketing, 1 support, and 2 developers.
And what happened to the Argentinian one?
A goose, God love her.
Yeah. Does she get a call up now? Like come back?
Absolutely. I had dinner with her. You've got to be careful having dinner with a goose because you can end up at 3 a.m. just blind as a bat. But when we did the transition, and because she was so opinionated and everything, unfortunately, she's the only one that's left after the purchase. She was trying to do marketing in Australia, but the way that Xero's set up, that was never going to work at that stage. So, unfortunately, we had to let her go. She let herself go. We would have loved to have kept her, but it was never going to work. There's too much of a clash. But everybody else has stayed on. So, anyway, we ended up doing the deal for $1.5 million, half in cash and $1 million in shares that vest over 3 years, and it's all out on blogs and stuff. So it's no shame in talking about it. So, and since then the shares have nearly tripled. So pretty happy about that.
Yeah. So I think I was talking to Chris, and he was like, the growth was is so just going out of control. It was something like you had to put another 20 staff on or something by Christmas. It's something crazy just to keep up with demand. And now, just to let you guys know, Xero is expanding into San Francisco, which is going to be your role.
Yeah. So I just got back from Wellington last night, and we did a big executive thing with everybody from around the world. And I was saying to Adrian before, like, the guys are just so bullish. We're nearly beyond sort of the point at which we might be purchased. So that's a huge thing. We're over 100,000 customers. We've clocked over 300 staff today. There's about 40 staff in Australia. There's 17 staff in San Francisco. We hire probably 3 or 4 or more staff every week. We've got about 60 jobs open around the world. My role now is we released integrated payroll in May of this year, and that was part of the catalyst to see just Australia go through the roof.
Sorry, could we go back? I just want to go back a little bit because I know a lot of people come here, aspiring to what you did. I don't want to just jump ahead and just go, what was it like? Here's this little baby you've built, you've been working your ass off, you got nothing out of it, that's what I'm saying, and then at 1.5 million was on the table. What does that feel like? And, were you just...
It's bloody stressful. It's shit. In the time that, in the actual transaction, it's really stressful because, I found it really stressful because, I remember the day that we got down to the nuts and bolts of it. John was on holidays in Noosa. 2 really senior guys. We'd had the conversation with Rod, and 2 really senior guys from who I love now, both of them. From Wellington came over. One had just started with them, the CFO, and the COO had been there a while, and they got on a plane at 3 a.m. in Wellington, came to the office at 9 a.m, crunched a deal, and went home again. And here's the company with whatever it was in the 25 million in the bank, they're listed, and here's us, it's just me in a shitty office in Abbotsford, trying to knock out the deal. And there was a couple of sort of funny things that we're all hooked up on, which turned out that is absolutely doesn't make any difference anymore. But at the time, we're committing to deadlines or product development roadmap or when we could do things, which ended up in the contract, was really hard. But after the deal was done, we were wrapped. And ultimately for us, what it came down to was whether we thought we could be more valuable alone or with Xero. And we picked Xero because a guy like Rod, who rightly would have just gone and built payroll, the train that we're attached to would all of a sudden leave off without us, and that might have taken 18 months or 2 years or whatever, but at the back of our mind it was really aligned to what we wanted to do, where our values were at, the fun that we were having. We thought we could probably reproduce, and it's turned out to be the case. So after we got out of the transaction, we had a good dinner. But just to put it in perspective, like I know articles get written and journalists don't even ring you when they write the articles, and so that's a bit interesting to get used to. But so the 500 in cash was more or less what we put into the business anyway.
Yeah.
So really it was just a mil, which is 500 a year, which is better than a job, but it's not off the scale or anything. We thought for a first exit that's we were pretty reasonably comfortable with that.
I think in the back of your mind, you're like, shit, these guys, they can build it for I don't know, say $500,000.
Well,
Is it kind of like, let's take it? Is this conversation?
No. Well, we thought they could build it for about $1 million, but it'd take them 18 months.
Yeah, which they didn't have. So we thought we could knock it out in about 9 or 6 months at that time. It took 9 months. And so, and we thought, our offer, we got offered $1 million. We said, no, that's rubbish, we want 2 million, and so we met in the middle. I mean, that's about as complicated as it got, really. So, I think $1.5 million for 2 years effort. When John had only gone sort of full-time when we sold. He was sort of, working a day a week and then 2 days a week and then 3 days and 4 days. So, it was real cliche sort of bootstrap.
Do you think that your product was better, say, compared to the other add-ons you mentioned?
No.
Or was it just lucky that, you'd had that early relationship with Rod way back in the day that sort of got you guys over the line?
The best thing about... The reason we were able to put ourselves in the position that we got to was our personality and our relationship with the accountants, basically, that we were trying to sell to. The way in which we approached it was really similar to the way Xero approaches it still today. We're a fun brand, we enjoy what we do, we're passionate about it. The other guys were just typical, we do payroll, and it's a bit boring. But we tried to bring a whole lot of, we enjoyed what we're doing, and we always found ourselves a little bit, tongue-in-cheek, saying, how can you possibly be passionate about payroll? That's a ridiculous thing to say. But we were, because we all just enjoyed building stuff, right? That's all it was.
Okay, so you have this success in New Zealand. Now they're kicking ass in Australia, well, the world really, because I know some of the stats there. And the plans are time to conquer the US, in a big way. Starting in San Francisco, and they've got you heading up, I don't know how many guys are you taking. You already have a couple of guys there.
Yeah, so we've appointed El Presidente, the President Jamie in the US. So we've got a country manager in the US, and he's got 14 guys, I think, or 14 people in just not dissimilar to this in San Francisco, in Soma. And they're doing the really, really hard grind that the New Zealand guys did early on, but what the Australian guys had to do as well.
So it's all starting from scratch almost.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's you ring your first accountant, and basically it's the accountant that you appoint to do your accounts.
Yep.
You just right. Okay, well, we need to build a relationship. This is what we're doing. Would you consider putting a client on? And then it's really hard stuff. The company has never really bought into the whole, we're going to spend millions on advertising philosophy. They nailed the strategy relatively early on. It was sort of a bit suck it and see, but the way to small business is absolutely through the accountant and the small business advisor, and they worked that out, and they came up with a strategy that talks about recruiting those accountants and bringing them on the journey, educating them about the product and how you can add value to your customers, and then finally, ramping that right up through your whole customer base. And that's nobody. The thing that fascinates me is nobody's really ever cracked that across the globe. Intuit are massive in the US. They've got 8,000 staff and $4 billion in revenue or something.
QuickBooks.
QuickBooks. MyOb did it in the early 90s, and particularly after the GST in 2000 in Australia. Sage have done it in the US. Microsoft have tried to do it and have never succeeded. MyOb tried to go to the US and the UK and didn't succeed. That was a disaster. So, that's the bit that I find most interesting. Nobody's ever done it globally. Really,
so
really well.
really like pretty much a real grassroots.
Absolutely, it is.
And what is the deal that you kind of get these accountants? Because we're going through the process of setting Xero up for our business, and we I think we found an accountant that was affiliated with you guys that knew the software and all. I think we paid him to come out and give us a bit of training and get us set up. But this guy's Danny Hayden.
Oh yeah,
because Chris knew him too.
Yep.
But he really was like a brand ambassador for you guys. Like it's obvious that he loves your products, and then he's trying to sell me on the shoebox.
Sure.
And so how does that? How do you get that excitement with these guys?
Because it's such a different. It's a revolution in the way accounting is operated, right? It's completely different to to what it's been like in the last 100 years. So what used to happen is that people get out their books and their ledgers and write it down. So only one person has got it at a time, and that hasn't changed really since people put in desktop computers. There's still only one person that can have your accounts at the time, right? Either the small business has got them or the accountant's got them. What we've done is said, well, that's just complete rubbish. Multiple people can work on your accounts at the same time. You don't need to stop working because your accountant's got your books, right? And that's at the cornerstone, or at the heart of it, that's what it is. But what that opens up is all these kinds of opportunities that the accountant can get involved in the small business. So you can be on the phone and talking about the same numbers. You update one number, and the small business can see that. What that does, and what Hamish Edwards, the co-founder with Rod, who was the accountant and not the sort of entrepreneur, really came up with the single ledger strategy and talking about value-added services for accountants. So they move off time-based billing to really being involved with the small business and doing what we call value-added billing. So every month, not only do you get and you would have seen this, not only do you get your zero or your Xero bill, but there's all kinds of things that your accountant does as well. So they do the quarterly BAS, right? They do your annual accounts. They might do an individual accounts. But a lot of the good accountants now are starting to do, say, quarterly meetings and talking about KPIs and doing some more sophisticated reporting for those small businesses. And so that tightens that relationship between client and accountant. And when small businesses see how this can actually operate, they really clue in and appreciate, because it's bloody lonely, right? The best thing that we did, or one of the excellent things that we did at Paycycle, was started buying into this vision and had the quarterly meetings with our accountant, not because he's any good, God love him, but it makes you sit back and think about the business just for the day before that meeting, because you're so busy and you just forget about everything. But you don't want to waste people's time, right? So we had 4 or 5 people in the boardroom, and you need to think about where you're up to and how you're going to get to the next step and analyse where you've come from. And those meetings were crucial in our strategy, really crucial.
Yeah, with our family business, my dad's old school, right? He's it's pretty much done. I don't know what the accountant does, right? Because it's just so organised by the time he gets it. But that's what I'm thinking. With Danny now, I'm like, what? I know what Xero must be doing. I'm like, what's the accountant doing now?
If the accountant's not doing, if the accountant is just doing compliance, they will go out of business. Yeah. In my mind, there's absolutely no doubt about that, because all the good accountants are adding value back into that small business. I used to hate it with a passion when you get to the end of the year, or usually like June the following year, you hand over your MYOB file, the accountant takes it for probably 8 weeks, doesn't do anything with it. You ring him up and you say, well, where is it? And he says, oh, hang on, let me check. He knows he hasn't done anything, takes it for a week, provides absolutely no value whatsoever, fills in your tax return, and sends you a cheque for $3,000. Sends you a bill for $3,000. It's the most appalling process, and it's never changed, up until now. And we're not so much the driver of that change. This change has been coming for ages, but we're definitely a catalyst to it. Yeah. All right, so you should change accountants for your family. No. Danny's awesome. I'm going to try it out anyway. But I know there's a big focus with Xero, and I don't want to be too Dan Oz direct because I feel like I'm plugging this Xero thing too much. But the reason I actually came across Xero myself was because I love Google Apps, and it kind of I guess you had the early idea to streamline yourself with them. And I know that talking with Chris Red, he was saying that you guys the add-ons are very important. Yeah.
And he said that because you've outgrown this office now, you're moving to a new office. You're actually going to try and house some of these add-ons in there, which I thought was really cool because, to have all those interesting small startups in one business, and you're getting to each other quickly, and those meetings just must be interesting, and it's just a benefit for everyone, I'm guessing. So
it is. So we were one of those add-ons.
Yeah.
And since then, Xero has purchased one more called Workflow Max, which is sort of a project management or task management tool. And the add-on market, the API, the open API that we've got is absolutely crucial to our strategy, because at the end of the day, accounting is just the boring bit, probably in the middle, but a business is that big, right? It's not just the GL and the AP and the AR. So if you're a retail business, you need point of sale. Do we want to build point of sale? Not really. It's hard, and it's got all kinds of sort of hairs on it, depending on how many stores you've got and whether you're hospitality or whether you're selling just normal retail. Do we want to build multi-warehouse, multi-jurisdictional inventory? Not really, but the guys at Unleashed in Auckland do. So, and they're doing really well. So our relationships with, I think, how many, Jen? Over 100 add-ons now are certified with Xero, and that's absolutely.
Yeah, that's going to come up brilliant on camera.
So you said certified, so they can still plug in via the APIs if they want to?
Yeah, they can. Yep. But they
not getting real estate on your website.
That's right. Our API guys get a lot of leads off the website, and we track their usage, so we know the popular ones and the ones that are just sort of starting and that kind of thing. And it's one of the really key differentiators that we've got in the market. Nobody else does it like us. Not QuickBooks, obviously not Mild. And it just opens up so much market opportunity, because we'll never finish everything, right? You can't. It's impossible. Hey.
What legal frame is involved in that API? Because I imagine that there's a lot of hairy stuff that could go on. Let's say someone decides to build a plugin, you guys are thinking about building into the product.
Yeah.
What do you do with a situation like that?
Yeah.
Sorry, just in terms of, like, because we're filming, it's going to go on there. Could you just repeat that?
Yeah, so I think Jung is asking, what if a partner builds some functionality that we go and build legally? So we built payroll, and we got a phone call one day from New Zealand and said, "Oh, we're building some payroll functionality. Just thought we'd let you know." And we thought, right, well that makes life a bit interesting, doesn't it? We'll just have to wait and see what happens. I mean, they watered it down from early on. They said, "Oh, well, it's going to be a global payroll offering." And when we got to see it, after the panic sort of set in, we thought, okay, well, it didn't have a few things, right? It didn't have, crucially, the tax calculations. It's sort of being a global solution. It didn't have anything to do with super. So we knew that they were key factors for Australia. We didn't think that it would take off. And ultimately, and ironically, that was absolutely the catalyst for our purchase, because the feedback in the customer base was like, this is shit. We're not going to use this. So to answer your question, we would talk pretty generally about the direction in product that we want to go. And as you get a better relationship with us, you'll understand where it's likely that we would go. For instance, we're not going to do CRM, if ever, for years and years, right? But if you come in closer to the GL, like, say, quoting or sales orders or purchase orders, something like that, then you know that we're probably going to hit that point at some stage. We've never been sued or anything as far as I know. I mean, there's a one-page disclaimer. We can do whatever we like. Really.
So does this problem happen with the add-ons as well? Almost stepping on each other's toes.
Yep.
And do you try to have guys that aren't competing? Or
No. More competition the better.
That's it. Yeah.
What it usually means as well, is that from the client's perspective, it allows for choice. At the end of the day, I mean, you're a tradie or whatever. It depends on how many guys you have working for you. Or also, I mean, look at something completely different, like mobile phones. It didn't stop Apple making a phone. Nokia already dominated that market, and so it is with apps, add-ons. Some are just easy to use, so you go with that.
I
there's
agree.
a whole myriad of reasons.
I actually, when it comes to looking at project management software, I can't remember the last thing I was looking for the business. One of the first things I did was like, what are the add-ons? Where can it go, and what's it? Is it going to sync up with Xero or whatever else? What are some of the exciting ones that you see coming in add-ons? I like this one. I know you got Shoebox.
Yep.
And I love this. I've never used it, right? Well, I can tell you I love it, but Shoebox is one where you send your receipts. See, for me, that's like where the whole my business. Send the receipts. They give you an envelope, they send the receipts, and they scan them all in. Tell me if I'm wrong here anyway. And then you have them all digitized, and you can search through them and stuff. For me, this is like where it breaks down. Come tax time in our house, it's like where we go back to getting the receipts out and trying to get in order. Yeah, it's like. So everything's, modern day digital, and then it goes back to prehistoric very quickly. So that's why I like that. Shoebox. Is there anything else that's been, getting a lot of traction?
There's the main ones that we've got, Unleashed in inventory and Vend in point of sale. Fathom, we love the boys in Queensland. They've made this beautiful reporting and KPI software. So that browser-based software. So really comes alive in multiple shops or multi-franchise operations where you can compare KPIs amongst, say, stores or franchises. So what that does, it goes and slurps everything out of Xero and processes it and allows you to sort of build any kind of report that you want. So and probably comes back to the question before, is like, would we ever, build more reporting? Sure. Would we ever go to that extent? Probably not. But, the guys have really taken a lead. So we're a very much design-led company. We like to think our accounting software is beautiful, and the boys in Queensland have done a fantastic job of, sort of taking that ethos and extending it. Well, I reckon personally, I think there's a fair bit of space in mobile add-ons that hasn't really been sort of leapt at yet.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good space to be in. I've got like a list as long as my arm of add-ons that I could build that I reckon would go all right, but I'm a bit busy. Yeah, I know. I'm happy to hand over my list if you give me 20%. The growth path that we're on, and the monetisation of small business is, I reckon, it's just fascinating. Like nobody else is doing it like we can.
And does Xero use Xero accounting software?
We do at the moment, but we are moving off. So we've got our own instance of Xero,
yep.
But we are moving to Microsoft Nav. We're not built for us, right? We're 300 staff, 30 plus million in revenue. We're built for 30 staff and 3 mil, right?
Yeah, so I was just curious. If you don't mind, we'll open up to some
questions.
questions.
Yeah,
please. Now, I know you guys, especially here to see Xero, I'm going to pick on you. What do you got first, Stuart? Is there anything you want to ask him? Alright.
I had a question about that. Was it Argentinian woman?
Agus, yeah.
How closely did, like you said, she stopped working at Xero when you went to Xero, but is what she was doing with the marketing, did that represent what Xero was doing? Like, were they pretty much one and the same, or do you think she would change Xero in any way if she did Xero, like if she was in charge of it?
Oh yeah, she would. There's no doubt about that. So there's two things there. I'll come to why it sort of didn't work out. So back when we were purchased, we doubled the Australian staff base from 6 to 12, and everything has been run out of New Zealand, like all the marketing content, and it's run by a really, really capable lady that's called Paula Jackson, who is out of big enterprise in telco background, and she's very Paula's way is absolutely Paula's way, and it just wasn't the way in which New Zealand operated with Australia at that point. There wasn't room for a marketing head, basically, and we still don't have really senior marketing in Australia. It's all operated out of New Zealand, and that's basically, sometimes these things happen. Would we do it differently? Yeah, but we sort of had, while we had similar values, we're at a much younger stage. You can get away with so much when you're just 4 people. And we're a lot more cheeky. We, picked fights with anybody who'd listen and some that didn't. We were opinionated in areas that you just can't be when you're publicly listed. You just can't sort of expose yourself to sort of some of the stuff that we did. I wrote a blog post of 49 reasons why I hate MYOB. You just can't do that. That's weird. I think I've turned it off. You just can't do that when you're publicly listed. You can have a cheeky go at the competition, but you can't, abuse them outright. That's just ridiculous. So, it was fun to write though, and that was our most responded to blog, and never heard anything from MYOB. It's like, oh well, we'll just continue. Keep going. Didn't bother me.
You don't think there was an advantage in some way, picking on the bigger guys?
Of course it is.
That's Australians, we like, going for the underdog.
Yeah.
Then we don't, well, we do, right? We cheer on an underdog, and then we don't like you to get too good.
Yeah.
Right?
And the reason I did, there was method behind the madness. The reason I did it is because I know it was around tax time, right? And MYOB is really searched in SEO. So I got as much links to MYOB in the whole blog post that I possibly could. So when people search MYOB and payroll, we started coming up. And that's the kind of stuff you can get away with. But there's no way you'd do that. God, if I published a blog, I may as well not go into the office tomorrow, It's like, it's just the way it is. So yeah, there are naturally differences.
Any more questions?
I'm just wondering about, you've got all this data now from a unique perspective on day-to-day runnings of small businesses. Are you doing anything with that data to either, think of new add-ons or you mining that data?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting area. So I guess I can say this. So I personally think that we're not really in small business accounting. We're actually a big data play. Like the stuff and Rod would say this openly, is that we've got whatever the percentage is in New Zealand. I think the public numbers are like 40,000 small businesses in New Zealand. We process a meaningful percentage of the GDP in New Zealand. We've probably got somewhere above 95% of the businesses in New Zealand in our database, like our customers. So that opens up enormously. Like the things that you can do with that is just mind blowing. So, but a couple of the philosophies that we're absolutely tied to is we would never sell it. What we want to do with it is drive value back into the customer base. Things that we can do, no other competitor have ever been able to do. This is a real meaty platform that we've got now. So, for instance, if you want to anonymously opt into aggregated data, you can, as a plumber, you can see potentially, and I'm just dreaming this up, right? You could see how the next plumber's going in your, or how all the plumbers are going in your suburb, how all the plumbers are going in the Melbourne area, how all the plumbers are going in Victoria. What about all the plumbers in the world? Like what's the average revenue or what's the average number of employees? Like the stuff that we've got around payroll is we're starting to process a meaningful number of employees in Australia. I think I can't remember, it's something like 40,000 employees. We've processed nearly over 200 million of payroll in Australia, and it's about 6 months. So we could be able to tell whether. You see the ABS stuff, right? Well, that's all rubbish. We're the only ones that have got it at that scale in the database about, number of employees going up or down, average wages, terminations, leave, accrued leave, and that's just payroll, we can see potentially, average debtor days going up and down. This is like the absolute heartbeat of small business in any given economy that we have meaningful numbers in. So I reckon it's like fascinating. But as it's like I can't reiterate enough. We're really responsible with the way we haven't done anything with it yet, and I know the guys will be like absolutely responsible with what they do with it.
Nothing else?
I was just going to ask, I heard another speaker say, like, they started in Australia, they went to New Zealand, and then they went to America. And then their choice for America was just like, hey, it's
the
big.
obvious one.
Yeah. So why, or do you know why Xero are targeting America now or next, and why not UK or another English-speaking or non-English speaking background? Like,
so that we actually did, or they did, UK before Australia. So they went New Zealand, UK. So Hamish went up to the UK really early on. And the reason they did that was because Rod in a previous business had tried to sell into Australia, and apparently his experience was Australians hate New Zealanders and they won't buy from them. So they went and did the UK first. So we've had an office in the UK nearly since day one, like before Australia. The numbers in the UK have really, it's been a long, long battle. And we're only now starting to see some traction. We don't know why that is so much, other than to say, like, the economy's pretty shit. Accountants are, like, unbelievably slow. Like, some... Oh, are they? Why? I found one that doesn't even use a computer the other day. Like, seriously. You know... Oh, it's just... You know, they write things down in their ledger. So, you know, a couple of factors. But we're starting to see, you know, and I was up there when we were with Paycycle thinking that was our next logical step too, because the jurisdictions in payroll are basically the same. The US is really hard. And, you know, the conversations were still around, you know, security. What happens if you lose my data? Whose data is it? What happens if the internet goes down? And these conversations stopped happening in Australia years and years ago. And you know, the obvious thing is, you know, do you use internet banking? And some of them still say no. It's like, oh, well, if you don't use internet banking, you're not going to use us, are you? You know, I'm wasting my time. So, and then the US is the US, right?
Sure. There's a really, really good product in the UK called Cashflow, which you'd be familiar with. How much of your success in Australia was attributed to them actually deciding not to come to the Australian market?
Can you turn the cameras off? Well, so the founder,
Was it a good luck decision for you guys?
No, nothing to do with it. So we've got a funny relationship. So the founder of Cashflow is a guy by the name of Dwayne Jackson, and Dwayne's got a colourful past. He can't travel to the US because he's spent time in jail there as a drug mule. And
Allegedly.
not allegedly, it's on his blog. You can look it up. So I've got a feeling he can't travel here either. So that bit I don't know about, but I'm just guessing. So, but we don't. They're not an insignificant player in the UK. We do come across them a bit, but where our strategy, you know, works across the globe is our relationship with the trusted advisor and the accountant. That's the bit that we've been able to crack, and Intuit and Sage and MYOB are the only ones that have also cracked it. No other individual company has been able to do that. Not even Microsoft. They had a big crack at it. So he's fine. He can continue along in the UK. I mean, in Australia we've got Sasu, right? You know, I like Mark. He's a nice guy, and it's a good product. It's a very broad product. They do CRM and payroll and stock and all kinds of stuff that we don't do. But, you know, our traction is just, you know, miles and miles through theirs. So it's not always just about the product. It's about your execution and your strategy and your culture and your people.
All right. Well, man,
One
thanks.
last question.
There we go.
So the competition in the US, is there any web-based competition in the US, or is it just standalone applications that are going on?
Yeah, so the biggest competition is Intuit, QuickBooks, and they've got an online product. They've had it for 10 years, and they're really starting to invest in it. They're a formidable competitor, like not like MYOB. They're really they're manning up too, because we're coming after them. They've come into Australia with their online product just because we're here. There's a couple of others around the edges, but that's the main one. Again, but they do have the partner channel. They've got 60,000 certified QuickBooks accountants, or whatever they call them, like Pro Network or something. They're organised, they're reasonably disciplined, they're reasonably intelligent, and they're reacting to our entry. What the advantage that we have though is that we're the David to their Goliath. You know, they've got 8,000 people, 8,000 staff, 4 billion in revenue or something. Takes a long time to turn the Titanic around. We've got 300 people and on a massive growth curve. They haven't got growth. Their revenue generally is, or their uptake of their online products is generally at the detriment of their offline or desktop products. So look, it'll be interesting. It's much harder in the US than it is here.
Did Xero get a big capital injection to take on the US, or what?
So we've raised, it's on the prospectus, but we've raised about 85 million, I think. Not necessarily just for the US, but we're a $560 million company. We don't need any more dough. As I say, our strategy is, and probably never will be, late night TV advertising or radio or even mainstream advertising for that matter. We've found a lot of advantage just, doing the accountant channel and pushing that.
It sounded to me that, sorry guys, I'll wrap it up too, but the customers are just coming to you now.
To some degree in Australia and New Zealand, yeah. But, you get to the point where the customers go to their accountants and saying, if you're not on Xero, we're going to pick another accountant. And that's when you know you're winning, right?
Yeah.
But that's a long, hard slog. Like that's guys like Adrian just working the phones, and we do events. We've got a really good event channel where accountants come along and learn about the cloud and the role that we can play in improving their business and all that kind of stuff. It takes a long time and a lot of events to get to that point.
All right, well, I think we'll end it there. I mean, Stuart, thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I hope it's a little bit interesting. Guys, look,
it's a big part of this thing is meeting each other and networking and coming away with at least a few business cards and stuff. So yeah, please hang around.
I'll be around.
Harass Stuart a little bit and
talk
Adrian
and Jenna from Xero as well. Yep. So thank you for coming along.
Yeah. And see you all next month. But I'll be walking around here too. So thank you very much, guys.